Hi there, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our exciting content. Today we're looking into the life of Carl Gustav Jung, a significant force who brought psychological theories into the 20th century. You might see his work reflected all around you and not even realize it. But first, let's take a trip down memory lane and look at Jung's childhood. Born on July 26, 1875 in Keswil, Switzerland, he was not an ordinary kid, but even though he had a bright imagination and a crazy sharp mind, he was lonely. Not only was he an only child, but it didn't help that he liked to play alone too. He was still a pretty smart child and he liked to observe the people around him. It must have run in his blood because even as a kid, Jung analyzed the adults in his life and tried to solve their problems. It didn't take him long to realize there was something strange about his mother. She was okay with the sun out, but during the night, she was a whole other person, and he was right. His mother told him about the spirits that would come to her room at nighttime. Only 3 years old, Jung had to see his mother being placed in a psychiatric hospital, and it wasn't the last time since it became almost routine over the years that followed. He loved her, but her absence from his life caused a rift in their relationship. What about his father? Well, being raised by a pastor was a unique experience. He saw how his father slowly lost his belief in religion, and that made him think. Was it that his father's approach was too academic? Did he lack genuine faith? These questions plagued his mind, and in the end, he had mixed feelings about his father. The elder Jung was a kind man, but the two never understood each other. Other than his father, many other male relatives were also part of the clergy. So anyone who knew him as a child thought he'd become a minister, no doubt about it. But, to everyone's surprise, as a teenager, he discovered his love for philosophy and gave up on his family traditions. Deciding to study medicine, his dream now was to become a psychiatrist, leaving his disappointing childhood in the past. Life took Jung from one institution to the next, and he finally enrolled at the University of Basel in 1895. Being a minister was old news. The gentleman from the 18th century had now moved to Zurich to pursue his new passion. His time in Zurich completely changed his life and the trajectory of his career. Under the watchful eye of Eugen Bleuler at the Burg-Hölzli Psychiatric Hospital, Jung saw patients, and here began his work. His supervisor encouraged him to study the patient's unconscious issues. Graduating in 1902, Jung had earned himself quite the reputation. The man was known as a specialist in the unconscious. And here's the interesting bit. The tests Bleuler and Jung carried out supported many of the ideas put forward by Sigmund Freud. Yep, the father of modern psychology himself. The real magic happened later, though. Bleuler helped the two titans of psychology meet, and their work was revolutionary. The two didn't just work together, they became close friends. From 1907 to 1912, the two shared ideas, had deep and long conversations, and exchanged countless letters. Freud knew he'd found his successor, the man he would pass the torch of psychoanalysis to. And for Jung? Well, the admiration went even deeper. To the 31-year-old Jung, Freud was more than just a respected colleague. He looked up to the man like a father figure. He didn't have someone he could share his thoughts with, and now he suddenly did. The two respected each other, but there was a crack in the camaraderie. Jung's view on the human psyche was different from Freud's, and he didn't appreciate how rigid his colleague was in his perspective. While Freud centered his theory around the ID, ego, and superego, Jung had a different approach. He divided the human psyche into the ego, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. There's another theory that we have the Swiss psychoanalyst to thank for: archetypes. You can think of them as templates for humans and their personalities and behaviors. Jung made a never-before-heard proposal that archetypes represent ancient forms of innate human wisdom, a heritage passed down through generations. Still, the two remained close, and with Freud's support, Jung got the role of editor for the Yearbook for Psychoanalytical and Psychopathological Research in 1908. It just goes to show how incredible he was that he climbed the ranks to become president of the International Psychoanalytical Association in 1910. This duo was unstoppable, or so it seemed. The reality was much harsher. The two psychoanalysts had a massive falling out, and in 1912 their friendship was no more. Talk about drama, but why did the two split ways? The answer to that is exactly what defines psychoanalysis. Ever since he could remember, Jung was a free thinker with a vivid imagination. So, while he agreed with some of Freud's ideas about the unconscious, there were some aspects he totally disagreed with. If you've ever studied Sigmund Freud's theories, You know he lays a lot of emphasis on sexuality. Jung didn't agree with it. And to show Freud just how much he didn't agree, he published the book Psychology of the Unconscious, in which he challenged several of Freud's theories. As you might expect, the veteran psychoanalyst didn't take this move too well. Soon enough, Jung was isolated from Freud's inner circle, and the power duo had sadly fallen apart. Fueled by bad tempers, the two now had no chance of working together again. Jung knew what he had to do. He resigned from the International Psychoanalytic Society in 1914 and set out on his own journey. He kept developing his own ideas on analytical psychology. His first achievement made waves in the community, the differentiation of two classes of people according to attitude types, extroverted and introverted, words we commonly use today. You can thank Jung for them, but that's not even half of it. He differentiated 4 functions of the mind: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. No one wants to revisit strange childhood dreams, right? Well, Carl Jung would disagree because that's precisely what he did. As a boy, he had powerful dreams and fantasies, and after his break with Freud, he wanted to bring them back into focus. He handed over the reins to the irrational part of himself and brought out the pen and paper to keep track of everything he dreamt and thought. A true scientist. All this data helped him develop a theory that these experiences came from a part of the brain that he called the collective unconscious. And one thing you must know about the collective unconscious: it's shared by everyone. Combine this theory with that of the archetypes, and you've got yourself Jung's study of the psychology of religion. Speaking about his work on the link between psychology and religion, the Swiss thought that texts from the past could teach us a lot. They gave him insight about himself and his patients, and Jung wanted all psychotherapists to study them. These works and experiences influenced him so much that he developed new psychotherapeutic methods based on them. He emphasized the Hermetic tradition, seeing it as an essential part of the development of human consciousness. He believed that heretical movements, like alchemy, expressed unconscious, archetypal elements missing in mainstream Christianity. Alchemical symbols in modern dreams were his jackpot, and he believed alchemists had created a guidebook for the collective unconscious. Through their work in the material realm, alchemists discovered personal rebirth and a link between outer and inner dimensions. These writings expose us to Jung's fascinating reflections on the symbols. Just look at the 3-headed mercurial dragon, hermaphrodites, and lions devouring the sun. His work is usually so scientific, so this was a change of pace. All these historical studies brought out some good. He designed a specific kind of therapy for middle-aged and elderly individuals who felt their lives lacked meaning. Jung helped them understand their place in history and discover their myths through dreams and imagination, a process he called individuation. His work still wasn't over, though. He also traveled the world and learned about new cultures to expand his understanding of the unconscious. Spending time in the United States, Kenya, Uganda, Egypt, and India, Jung passed away on June 6, 1961 in Küsnacht, but his works still shine brightly today. After all, he's been a major source of influence on literature and art. Jungian psychology leans a lot more toward literature than Freudian psychology, and that's probably because Freud was a science man through and through. As you can see, Jung did accept mythical traditions. Jung saw psychology as the exploration of the human psyche. He had a solid connection to visual arts and was influenced by modern art in his youth. This influence extended to 20th century art movements, particularly Surrealism and Abstract Expressionism. In fact, the renowned abstract expressionist Jackson Pollock was fascinated by Jung's work. If you take a long look at Pollock's paintings, you'll start seeing symbols that'll definitely remind you of Jungian theory, like masks and the interplay of opposites. It's not a secret that the artist was inspired by Jung's exploration of the collective unconscious. Jung and his use of mixed media art laid the foundations for art therapy today, and that's a fact. Just check out his artistic exploration in The Red Book and his use of imagery and psychology, symbolized by his concept of the analytic third. What are your thoughts about Carl Jung and his theories? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.